So welcome back to the shop. Remember I sprayed this hood a couple of days ago with some 2K primer. That was the second time I used a spray gun. And I learned a lot since the first time I used a spray gun. So twice even, you learn. But what it turns out, it's all about the atomization. It's all about the air pressure turning the paint into the finest droplets you can. So think of a tennis court and you fill that with beach balls. Right? So a tennis court is your flat surface and you throw beach balls in there, big beach balls. Well, you're going to see all sorts of irregularities, right? Because that's what a beach ball is. It's rather large and you're going to have gaps all over the place. And that truly is orange peel. But think of taking that same tennis court and filling it with golf balls, right? I mean, you'll have a much smoother surface, and that's really it. So what you need to do on your gun is make sure that when you pull that trigger, you get as fine of a mist as possible as far as the paint. You want it to atomize as much as possible, and that's when you're going to lay down the best paint you've done. And like I said, this is the second attempt at spraying paint, and you can see it's really quite smooth because I had the pressure turned way up. I was at 30 psi at the gun. Remember though, this is a thick paint. You probably don't need to do a 30. You might even be in the 20s if you're laying down a clear coat or if you're laying down a base coat. But when it came to this heavy paint, 30 pounds of pressure, I had the gun wide open, which meant I had the fan wide open, and I had the metering rod wide open, and that gave me a really good job. Now I got a couple of droplets, but I mean that's just drips. But those will work out with the sandpaper. Now speaking of sandpaper, so I'm not at this with anything under 200 now. This is a 220, and I'm just going to lightly skim this 220 over this. And then I'm probably going to move up into the 300 or 400s on the paper, because after this, I'm really going to be prepped for paint, right? So I just want to sand this now so that I get a consistent coat. Remember, this stuff works as a guide coat. So as I start to sand it and I start to run the paper back and forth, you can see it's changing color. And that's my guide coat. So if I can get to this beautiful consistent color right here, I mean, that is gorgeous. I have no more dark spots. I've got a nice spot here where that is just purely a light gray. If I can do that through the whole hood without bursting through, without cutting through, so being very careful on the edges, being careful on the inside grooves and edges, if I can get this whole hood like that, I'm ready. All I have to do then is wait until the whole car is done, and then probably go over the car with maybe even an 800 wet to even remove the scratches that I'm leaving here, and then this car is ready for paint. Okay, I purposely took myself out of frame because I wanted to get a close-up. So this is fantastic. I have not burned through anywhere. I've been taking my 220, like I said, around the block, and again, I'm cutting the flat surfaces on a diagonal, and I just keep working at that until I see a consistent gray color. I don't see any more of the dark mottled spots. Remember, orange peel is nothing but hundreds of little bumps, and you're going to cut the top off those bumps, but as soon as the top is cut off those bumps and you now contact the lowest spot, you're going to get a consistent gray. Now here you can still see some mottling. That's because I'm not cutting in here that hard. Why? Because I'm not going to take this block into that corner. Because if I take this block into the corner and I just even touch this edge, I'll cut through it, because that is a razor edge, and I'll have the entire weight of the block on that razor. It'll cut in a second. The only reason it doesn't cut through on this flat surface is because the entire area is distributed across the panel. Once you get into these corners, I highly recommend you either switch over to, as I said, the round block, where the round block allows me to go up to the corner but not over it. I'm not going to cut over it because I don't want to cut the paint. I'm going to come up to it, and as I said, you can see it's cutting, no problem. And I'm kind of rolling it as well, but I'm going up to the corner and I'm stopping. I'm not driving over. Now obviously it's cutting way more now. I'm almost gray, almost the modeling is gone. So I just continue on that process. There we go. So I've got my consistent color, and I'm going to stop now because I don't want to cut any more, because I want to leave some behind so that the 800 can do its job, right? Because now I want to get rid of those fine scratches that were created by the 220. But getting back to my point, take the paper, as I said before, we're going to fold it. We're going to fold it again. This gives me a rigid board, and that rigid board is where I'm going to take it now with my fingers and bring it up into the corner. But you can see I'm going to stop as soon as the edge of that paper hits that corner. I'm going to stop. And the reason is I don't want any pressure on that corner. But this allows me now to get up and do that final cut. You see it's beautiful in here now. And then I can come on the top and again just lightly hit that corner, and that's it. One drag. You don't want to sand that. And then we can just kind of move up to the top. And now my transition is done on the top here. I can switch back to the boards because now I'm back on a flat surface. This is half the hood done. Probably took me about 20 minutes. With the 220, this is one sheet of 220, and you can still see as long as you clean them quite often, right? As soon as you start sanding and you feel it moving too easy, take it off, tap it on the leg or tap it on the side, and that'll clean it. And we're just going to continue on, and that'll be it for this hood. There are a few spots that are dark, and I wanted to stop. The reason I stopped is because I don't want to cut through. Secondly, this is really aggressive, so I'm going to be coming back with 800. If I can't erase that with 800, then I'm going to use like a spot putty, right, a glazing putty to sand that out. But like I said, I certainly don't want to continue sanding that low spot, or I will hit, or I will burn through. So, like I said, I haven't burned through anywhere. This is perfect. I'm going to do the other side. Any imperfections I'll take care of with spot putty, but this hood I think is ready for paint. Well, again, after the 800. So once it's back on the car, I'll give you guys an update.